Hey everybody, welcome back to the Overwatch channel on YouTube. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you some of the science of consciousness and the implications it has, which is basically that your body needs your consciousness, or physical bodies and beings need consciousness, but consciousness does not need the physical body. Stay tuned. I'm going to show you some very interesting science on this, and I'm going to also add some of my own thoughts and opinions. But first, I'd like to start off by talking to you about a little comparison with black holes, which is an astronomical concept of basically a imploded star. I think you've all seen that in sci-fi movies and documentaries. Everybody knows what a black hole is. The difference is that what a black hole, I think, would be something that you could say science makes an extraordinary claim about, because it's never been seen. It cannot be seen. It is proven through mathematics and physics. We can't put a black hole into a laboratory per se and study it. We can't send spacecraft out to where these things might be based on gravitational distortions that scientists can maybe perceive and study it. And if they are exactly as science predicts they are, we probably wouldn't want to get too close to one anyway. But here's the thing. Science is dominated primarily by a kind of a social peer pressure from materialists, atheists. And this video doesn't have anything to do with any particular religion. It has to do with science. And it's interesting that an extraordinary claim like a black hole really doesn't need much extraordinary proof for the average atheist to probably believe in it. And when you do have things that have far more proof and evidence and data and actual subject matter that you can study in a laboratory with tests, that gets rejected when it proves something that materialists do not want to believe. It's really astonishing. And because their peer pressure dominates a lot of science, for fear that some of these obvious conclusions lead to some kind of religion, they do everything they can to obstruct science. People like Sir Roger Penrose, I don't think anybody would say this guy's an idiot or anything. He's a mathematical physicist and a genius, best I can tell. He has collaborated in the past with Stuart Hameroff, who's a doctor and expert in anesthesia, and has been studying consciousness for over 40 years. I'm going to show you some things today. Some things I'm going to show you, I'm just going to play for you from other YouTube channels, certain clips. And I'll link to everything that you see, plus more, in the description section below, so you can do your own research. But what I'm going to show you is a video that I'm going to attach to the end of the first part here. After I'm done talking, after I'm done showing you these clips, I'm going to play for you it's like a 10 to 15 minute presentation from Hameroff, where he basically lays this out in layman terms. And after that, I'll give you a conclusion part that I'll attach at the end. But first, I want you to listen to just how in-depth scientifically this stuff goes. These are just some clips from one of Hameroff's presentation where he was defending one of his scientific theories based on a lot of evidence that he's collected. He was defending a model that he has for consciousness. And I want you to listen to the introduction here, and then we're going to skip ahead a few places just to hear some key things.
I'd like to introduce Stuart Hameroff from University of Arizona. He is going to talk about clarifying the tubulin bit qubit, and then 5 minutes on defending the Penrose-Hameroff OR model.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, HeartMut and Google, for hosting us, and y'all for coming. The title of my talk is Clarifying the Tubulin Bit Qubit, Defending the Penrose-Hameroff OR model of Quantum Computation and Microtubules. Travis Craddock and Jack Tusinski are my co-authors, and Jack is here. Penrose-Hameroff OR, orchestrated objective reduction, is a theory of consciousness based on quantum computations and microtubules. OR is Penrose's mechanism for self-collapse of the wave function. Orc is orchestration, which is my biological contribution to how this could happen in both the isolated and interactive environment. But I'm not going to talk about that specifically. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview about microtubules. We've heard quite a bit about some of the technical aspects, but I want to kind of back up and give you the big picture a little bit. Consider a single-cell paramecium, which can swim around, avoid obstacles, avoid predators, find food, learn. If you suck it into a capillary tube, it escapes. If you do it again, it escapes more quickly. It can find a mate, and it can have sex. This is actually a picture of two paramecium having sex. It's probably the only X-rated picture we'll see today. And it doesn't have any synapses. It doesn't have any nervous system per se. How does it do it? It uses structures called microtubules. And I often kid my AI friends they should worry about simulating a paramecium before worrying about a brain. So microtubules.
Okay, so I'm going to skip ahead in a minute, but that was very important. He was saying these people that talk about the singularity, that want to try to somehow put consciousness into a machine, they should worry about trying to recreate this before they try to recreate a human brain, or however our consciousness works inside or with our brain. This is very important because I think that a lot of people involved in that singularity concept, they believe that through some kind of computational trickery, that's how consciousness works. It's best I could describe it in simple terms. When in fact, that's not how it works at all. You'll see that as we go on. But I'm going to skip ahead now because he says something very important about the scientific community and the threat that this emerging information. Actually, this is scientific information that scientists have known for a while. And they have said it in places like this where they discuss stuff that will make your head spin unless you're a mathematical genius or if you're not a biologist. A lot of this stuff is like, what did he just say? But, you know, when he explains it in layman terms, it's quite clear what he's saying. And but I'm going to listen to, skip ahead here and we'll listen to another part.
Superposition of both states, a quantum bit or qubit. I got interested in microtubules in 1972 when I was in medical school and worked for about 20 years on the idea that they processed information strictly classically and did molecular automaton models with a number of physicists, met Jack along the way, Steen Rasmussen and Los Alamos and others, modeling them as sort of the game of life, the cellular automata shown here based on dipole interactions between the tubulin, and show that with some basic assumption using Froelich oscillations as a clocking mechanism, that microtubules could process information and in principle, based on a few assumptions, were very efficient computational devices for both storage and processing of information. And here just shows a sequence. Initially, we thought the clocking sequence was frolic gigahertz, but with the recent information, we're perfectly happy with 8 megahertz clocking that Jure Pokorny has discovered and Audubon's been talking about. So each of these steps could be occurring at 8 megahertz and by a sort of a cellular or molecular automata type of mechanism. But so far, this is strictly classical. Now, in the late 80s, somebody said to me, okay, let's say you're right. How would that explain consciousness? And I had to admit that they were right. I didn't really know. Fortunately, I read Roger Penrose's book, The Emperor's New Mind, where he had a mechanism for consciousnness based on quantum computation, but he didn't have a good qubit in the brain. So I suggested microtubules were his quantum computers and tubulin were the quantum bits, and he agreed. He liked the geometry of the microtubules, and we developed the model in the early mid-90s, and it was almost immediately attacked by a number of people for various reasons. It's threatening to many people for different reasons. So the basic idea is that in a microtubule, each tubulin can be...
Now, that's very important. It's very threatening to various people for various reasons. The reason is, well, because if science shows that consciousness exists apart or separated from the physical body, after you die, after your body dies or stops functioning to some degree, your consciousness actually moves out of your body and becomes free from it, and you are aware. You are conscious. You have your thoughts, your memories, and you are being in what I guess you would call a spirit form, and you're able to, and now you ascend to a higher dimension and go on to meet God eventually, I guess. And the science that shows this, of course, would destroy materialism. Just like in historical times, there's been many different instances where science has eventually proved what some people believed was false, and there was turmoil, a paradigm shift, But that's very, very important. So his theory here, he's defending it. At the end, he shows that the attack on it was kind of meaningless, but we'll just play a little clip toward the end to get an idea of what conclusions he made after this presentation. You can watch the whole thing, but it's 45 minutes long, and you're dealing with a subject that, unless you're studying microtubules, you have to listen, and I'd rather you hear a layman's explanation later.
Tucson, and the odd number of years it's elsewhere in the world. So next May it'll be in Stockholm, Sweden, toward the science of consciousness, brain, mind, and reality. And one of the sessions will be on transcranial therapies. We have Alan Snyder talking about, well, he's done a lot of transcranial magnetic, but he's going to talk about transcranial electrical. Tyler's going to talk about transcranial ultrasound. And Wasserman from NIH will talk about transcranial magnetic stimulation. We're also going to have a session on quantum biology and several other interesting sessions. And I've left some flyers over there for you to take if you're interested. So conclusions. The objections to Orko-R by McKemish et al. And Reimers et al. Are invalid as far as I can tell. They didn't lay a glove on us as far as I can tell. Maybe I missed something, but they whiffed. There's nothing in there that's threatening in any way. Of course, I'm biased, but So Orko-R remains viable, and finally, it is far better to be criticized than ignored. Thank you very much.
So he defends his theory here so far. It's a model that I think is held up even till now. But the thing is that moving on now to near-death experiences. If you study near-death experiences, yes, some of them are based on people's testimony alone. Other cases aren't so independent of the person. Or what I should say is there's things that can be corroborated. So, person dies in a hospital setting. Obviously, there's medical, scientific evidence that their body and brain temporarily stopped functioning, and they have an out-of-body experience. In several fascinating cases that I can't understand how some people can just continue to, okay, if you take the scientific evidence and combine it with the data that you have that corroborates it, it matches it, and still twist and turn and come up with some kind of crazy excuse for all this stuff. But when people that are blind from birth, listen to this is just a small clip of one case. Is an example, but there are many others. There's a book called Mindsight where I think 21 of these cases were investigated in some depth. I haven't actually read the book. I read a description of the book. I'm just passing that on to you if you want to take a look at that. It's from author, I think, is Kenneth Ring. But let's take a quick clip. This is a clip you can find on tons of YouTube channels. It's a small clip from an interview with a blind woman. But just listen to this part.
The most intriguing examples are of blind people becoming sighted for the first time. Vicky Nuratuk had been blind from birth.
I've never seen anything. No light, no shadows, no nothing. A lot of people ask if I see black. No, I do not see black. I do not see anything at all. And in my dreams, I don't see any visual impressions. It's just taste, touch, sound, and smell, but no visual impressions of anything.
In her early 20s, Vicky was involved in a serious car accident.
The next thing I recall, I was in Harborview Medical Center and looking down at everything that was happening. And it was frightening because I'm not accustomed to see things visually because I'd never had before. And initially it was pretty scary. And then I finally recognized my wedding ring and my hair. And I thought, is this my body down there? And am I dead or what?
We can't bring her back into Cashmore.
When I was a kid, I would ask my dad questions, I guess you could say philosophical questions, you know, like many kids have questions like that. Like, why is there evil? Why do people do bad things? Or, you know, things like that. My dad's answer was, if there wasn't any evil or if there was no night, how would you know what day or good was? And that was a profound answer that kind of stuck with me. And something I didn't even realize, people born blind actually don't even have a concept of what darkness is because they've never seen light. So there's just no visual input at all to the brain. They don't dream visually. They don't understand vision because they've never experienced it in their body. They die, and because of today's technology, we can come much closer to being completely dead permanently than we ever have before and still being saved, being brought back. And blind person consciousness unplugs and they can see. As a matter of fact, it's common for near-death experiencers to be completely free from whatever dilemmas they were having when they were in their physical body. But this phenomena here of people blind and people blind from birth that can see during near-death experience is just another piece of the evidence. You combine that with the scientific research, and now you get to start to the point where you really got to wonder how deranged and delusional people have to be to not just look at the facts. I'm not connecting these facts to any particular spiritual belief or religion, because those are interpretations of the supernatural and they're not necessarily factual. I'm just dealing with straight facts here. So let's see. Here's another case. I'm not going to play this video for you. It's a case from 1976. If you just Google Maria's shoe, you can find it. I might put this link in the description section below. Basically, a woman in Seattle, I think it was Seattle, dies or has a near-death event in a hospital. And while she's they're trying to resuscitate her, She typically leaves her body. She's now able to move around freely through walls, through whatever. Actually goes outside the hospital, several floors above her, and on the ledge of a window there is a shoe, a sneaker, a tennis shoe, whatever. And when she gets resuscitated after she recovers, she tells the hospital personnel about her experience. One of the workers goes and actually looks for this shoe and ends up finding it. The description given by the woman in full detail of whatever the shoe was, the color, how the lace was, some scuff mark it had on the outside of the building. You would have to be on the outside of the building facing the window on the third floor or something to be able to see this scuff mark on this shoe. But these are all just people's imaginations or hallucinations. This is Dr. Dean Radin. I'm going to play a small clip here. He does a lot of research into a field of study that they call noetic sciences. And basically they're trying to research, like, do we have is there any scientific evidence that synchronicity means something, or telepathy happens, or there's a global consciousness reaction to our world, or, when all minds focus on something, does the universe kind of vibrate and respond? So it's a lot of different stuff, but he has many videos on YouTube, several books that he's authored, including his latest is called Supernormal, which I hope to finish reading soon. But I just want you to hear, he's going to show you here some experimentation and the results and the odds of some of these things that can be replicated in laboratories come to. Let's listen.
Awareness, which is one of the reasons why we don't see the superpowers that are described in legends. So the Yoga Sutra says in Book 3, Sutras 19 and 20, that there should be knowledge of minds. Well, in the modern world, we can test this, and so an experiment that has been developed and tested now for about 40 years, it's called the Ganzfeld telepathy technique, and it consists of taking a subject, in this case it's a lady named Gail. We put half a ping pong ball over each eye, we tape it on her eye and ask her to keep her eyes open, and then we shine a red light in her face. So if you can imagine, with your eyes open, all you can see everywhere is just red. We also have her wear headphones, so she only hears white noise, and she sits in a comfy chair. And after being in this state for about 10 minutes, you begin to hallucinate. Very similar to the hypnagogic state that you would achieve just as you're falling asleep. And this is intentional. We want to pull the person away from their ordinary state of awareness and put them into a highly receptive state where their brain becomes starved for some kind of pattern because all they're looking at is red and they're not hearing anything. So my research assistant, Lena, is setting up Gail in this picture. So in the experiment, we set up beforehand 4 pictures which are as different from each other as we can manage. And one of the 4 will be telepathically sent to Gail. And Gail will then look at the 4 and try to figure out which one matched her impression. So we know by design that the odds against chance of getting the correct one is 1 in 4. If there's no telepathy, the best she can ever do is 1 in 4. So here's what Gail said while she's in this state called the Ganzfeld state. Something has a rough texture, tall, looking up high. Remember, Gail knows nothing about what target is being sent and doesn't know what the 4 pictures are either. Like in an art gallery or in a museum, a Yosemite kind of a tall rock, monolithic, images of Mount Rushmore, half dome, like a big stone. So if you were Gail and you had those experiences and now you're shown these 4 pictures, which one would you think might be the target that was being sent to you telepathically? Right, the pyramid. So this is an example of one trial in this kind of experiment. It takes generally 60 to 90 minutes from beginning to end. So there's a huge amount of effort by multiple people to get one data point. And it collapses all of Gale's experience into a single point. So this is done for the sake of ending up with very, very simple statistics. And so fortunately, there are now 4,674 sessions, of which I showed you one, in 122 experiments conducted in 20 laboratories around the world over 40 years. So here's chance, this dotted line, and you can see then where the result of each experiment is in terms of the hit rate, where 25% is chance expectation. And I'm going to show you the same graph in terms of a cumulative average rather than each separate experiment. And now you can see that cumulatively, we're pretty far away from chance. It's about 32% rather than 25%. The odds against chance of ending up there rather than chance is 300 trillion quadrillion to 1. This has been discussed repeatedly in the academic psychological literature for a number of years, starting in 1994. So this has been discussed and critically appraised within the academic world. When you have odds against chance of 300 trillion quadrillion to 1, it addresses what is a valid skeptical concern about extraordinary evidence. If you're making an extraordinary claim, it's only extraordinary because of an assumption that materialism is completely true and nothing else is true. Well, this is extraordinary evidence. Whenever you do an experiment of this type, and one of the reasons why I like the kind of work that I do is because when you present evidence that is contrary or countering what the mainstream accepts, it has to be much better. It has to be, there's a higher bar to achieve, so the methods have to be better, the attention to detail has to be better, and for me, it's just a better challenge of doing science better. So we look through all of the possible ways we can think of, and skeptics over the years have thought of how can you explain the results that we see in these experiments. And you go through the due diligence list, and the one thing that you can't do as a single experimenter is ask about replication. Well, we saw that there are 20 labs doing this, and they replicate, but it then boils down to, well, what if somebody did it who really did not believe in telepathy at all? And I have to say, before I started doing these experiments, I didn't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I didn't know if telepathy existed, but I allowed the data to bring me into a direction that says it probably exists, because otherwise it's hard to explain these data. Nevertheless, are there people who absolutely still don't believe any of this and will do these experiments? And the answer is most of the time no. Because if you don't believe in something, why would you spend the time to go ahead and look at it? Fortunately, there were a pair of psychologists who explicitly said that they did not believe in any kind of psychic ability, but they went ahead and did the same kind of Ganzfeld experiment anyway. And so they report after 8 studies, we had an overall statistically significant hit rate of 32%, which is exactly what you see when you look at the overall database. Well, they didn't like this. And so because it was precariously close to demonstrating humans do have psychic powers. So that
now that just hits a home run point for me. It's exactly what I'm trying to say. When a scientist is doing science and he's interested in science and not in just some entrenched belief that they have, that's wonderful. When entrenched beliefs, if you have an entrenched belief, let me just say this, it's a necessary thing to believe in something strongly, and when you're right, it makes the world a better place because you can move things forward, you can effect change, you can do all kinds of wonderful things when you're really convicted with a belief and you happen to be correct. When you have a belief that is corrupted through some error, and people don't do this enough, they don't challenge what they believe, cross-examine their own entrenched belief system and challenge it for themselves. Only a person can, you can only change your own entrenched belief. No one else can change it for you, no matter what they show you, no matter what evidence they present to you. You see there are scientists that don't believe in something, replicate an experiment, get the same results, and they're like, this is really dangerously close to proving this phenomena exists. Well, that's at that point they left science behind and they went off somewhere else. Now, I'm going to stop my video here, and I'm going to be attaching a TED Talk with Dr. Stuart Hameroff. And he goes over a lot of the details of this, of his work, and the key points are the people that believe in the singularity, their model is wrong. Therefore, their effort to create a conscious AI won't work because it violates the way the universe and our consciousness works. It can't work. So, and he discusses the soul or consciousness existing outside the body. And I'll see you on the other side of that video presentation, and we'll go on from there. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you very much. Hello, Tucson. I'm going to talk about the future of consciousness. I'm an anesthesiologist at UAMC. I take away patients' consciousness every day and bring it back. I've been obsessed with the problem of consciousness for almost 40 years, studying it. I can tell you that consciousness is really the only thing that matters. If you don't have consciousness, you don't have anything. Now, we want pleasurable consciousness, spiritual, wonderful consciousness. We don't want bad vibe consciousness. But if you don't have consciousness at all, you ain't got nothing. Now, being means phenomenal awareness, having experience, having a experiential sensation, colors, taste, love, feeling, joy, pain. But it's different than having a subconscious or non-conscious behavioral response. Everybody wants to know the answer to this question. Can consciousness exist outside the body after death? What happens when we die? Is it possible that our soul can leave the body? Is it possible that consciousness being can exist outside the body? We've certainly heard many, many anecdotal stories. Can consciousness be downloaded to a computer? We hear a lot of stories about that too, although it's all speculation. Can the substance of the brain, of the mind, be downloaded into a computer so when our bodies are about to give out, we can transfer and be conscious indefinitely? It's not living forever, it's being conscious forever that people might be after, if that's a good idea. Now, there are a lot of people claiming this. Ray Kurzweil, a famous AI guy, his singularity is the point he projects when computers will equal the brain and we'll be able to download our consciousness into a computer. I don't think so. But some people do. In the matrix, consciousness within a computer system, there's Bing. Maybe consciousness could be transferred into an avatar, as in this movie, Bing. But the answer to these questions it depends on how the brain produces consciousness, which is an age-old question. We take it for granted, we open our eyes, and Bing happens. We see the world in front of us. This has been studied by neuroscientists. We go around the clock. We see many, many different disciplines, including an anesthesiologist who looks suspiciously like me, if you can see him, meditators, philosophers, psychiatrists, physicists, artists, computer scientists. Most people would say, scientists would say, that the brain is a computer in which nerve cells, neurons, and synapses act like bits and switches in a computer. However, in Eastern philosophy, consciousness pervades a deeper level of reality. Being is everywhere. Now, let's take the scientific view for a second. The so-called scientific. I think this is a pseudoscientific view that consciousness emerges from this type of processing, because if we have inputs and outputs in a little network like this, we get all kinds of behavioral and cognitive responses, but there's really no reason to suspect that there's any consciousness. Where's consciousness? Where's the being? Why would it come out of a computer? There's really no reason to suspect that that's true. It's kind of a default position. For example, the idea there is that each neuron is simple. It's an on-off state, a switch, a bit, a 1 or a 0. But if we take a single-cell creature like a paramecium, it swims around, it finds food, it avoids obstacles, predators, it finds a mate and has sex. This is an X-rated slide. There are two paramecium over there having sex. Maybe they're conscious, I don't know. I think the answer is to go to a finer scale, going deeper into the neuron, not just looking at the membrane, but at finer level, deeper level structures.
called microtubules inside neurons. Now, we know about microtubules because when they fall apart, you get Alzheimer's disease. Everybody talks about the beta amyloid plaques, but the problem really is inside the neuron where the microtubules fall apart and you lose cognition, you lose memory, and eventually consciousness, but it's usually memory for quite a while. Now, I've been studying these structures called microtubules for almost 40 years and came up with the idea in the 70s and 80s that they act like computers, process information at a much, much finer level scale, that each protein can be a bit or an on-off state. And if you look inside a neuron, we have all this structure, and we see these microtubules which look actually like an ear of corn that we heard about earlier, and can process information. So there's a whole nother level of information processing going on inside the neuron at a deeper level. And this is where I think consciousness emanates from. These microtubules can store memory from the synapse in these hexagonal patterns. And we take it to a level further to the individual subunits of the microtubule protein. And in the yellow band, you see the red dots are where anesthetics act to block consciousness, and these dipoles flip back and forth to register states to give rise to functioning, eventually leading to consciousness. Now, these dipoles are down at the level of individual electron clouds. They're quantum level forces. And quantum gets us into a whole other realm, literally. So here's more about the dipoles in the tubulin, and we've suggested that these projections around the microtubules can correlate or actually represent or actually be emotional feelings and so forth. Now, quantum, if you go down in scale, you get to a level where everything changes. We're really living in a world with two separate sets of physical laws. At the small level, we get into the quantum realm, and it's one world, so I put it on this yin-yang type of arrangement where quantum and classical are the two portions of the yin-yang. Now, in the classical world that we're familiar with, because that's where we perceive and exist, classical, everything's localized, particle-like, and fairly large. In the quantum realm, not only is it small, but things can be in multiple places at the same time. That's called superposition. Non-local, spread out, connected over distance, coherent, entangled, wave-like. That's the quantum world, and the boundary between the two has something to do with consciousness. Now, as we get into the quantum world, we go down and down and down in scale, and we get into the fine structure of space-time geometry of the universe. And as you go down in scale, eventually you reach the basement. It's called the Planck scale at the very bottom. And there's information there. It could be quantum geometry, it could be strings, nobody really knows. But the point is there's information, and Roger Penrose has suggested that Platonic information is embedded there. Some people say the cosmic wisdom of the universe is embedded at this most fundamental level, at the tiniest level of the universe. Now, some people have observed that the quantum classical divide is the same as mind-matter, with mind being very quantum-like and matter material or classical. Quantum being spirit-like, classical being material. And Penrose suggested that essentially consciousness is on the boundary, is a process on the edge between quantum and classical worlds. And spiritual traditions like Kabbalah claim that consciousness dances on the edge between two worlds. It could be between the quantum and classical worlds. Penrose and I developed a theory a number of years ago in the mid-90s. It's very controversial, highly criticized, but still doing very well and holding up with more and more experiments, that there's quantum computation going on inside microtubules, inside neurons. Here we are in 1994 after the first Tucson conference. That's Roger in the yellow shirt, me about to fall into the Grand Canyon, David Chalmers on the far left. And here we are more recently, 2 years ago in Sweden. So the basic idea is that quantum computations reach a threshold for consciousness. There's a Bing moment. And you can have a sequence of Bing moments, of conscious moments. At a higher frequency, you can become more intense. At slower frequency, it's not as intense. So it's kind of like photons. It's kind of like moments of consciousness, very much like the philosopher Whitehead. And it connects to a deeper level in space-time geometry, as we see at the bottom. Now, I'm running through these quickly, obviously, but the basic idea is that the quality of the rose, the redness of the rose, is a pattern in space-time geometry which is reproduced in her brain by virtue of this mechanism that connects our brain to fundamental space-time geometry. So the idea is that as consciousness can actually go down in this hierarchical level, It's like a fractal going down a deeper level, higher intensity, faster frequency, very much like the Beatles song, the deeper you go, the higher you fly. The higher you fly, the deeper you go. As you meditate or become enlightened or whatever, more conscious moments per second, and it's occurring at a deeper level of the universe. This is what I would call enlightenment. So, you want immortality. Let's go back to the question at the beginning. I think there are three choices. You can wait or hope for downloading into a computer, as I showed earlier. Maybe believe this guy, Ray Kurzweil. I don't. I think the premise and the basic assumptions that they make of one neuron, one bit are completely wrong. And I keep telling Ray you should simulate a paramecium before you simulate a brain. Or you could wait or hope for downloading consciousness into a biological array of microtubules, as I suggested in a book I wrote in 1987, that we could download our minds into these centriole-type structures where Bing would occur, maybe even giant ones floating in zero gravity so that they could rotate. Or wait or hope for the old-fashioned way. Because I think consciousness can actually exist in fundamental space-time geometry, and so we may not need to download it. It's kind of a spiritual idea, but I think there's a scientific rationale for believing that this actually occurs. So I think Bing goes all the way down. And in conclusion, let me just say that consciousness in the brain cannot be explained by modern science, by conventional approaches. So they can't really say, well, that's silly to think that it can exist out of the brain, because they don't know. And quantum effects may connect brain activity to the most basic level of the universe. And finally, consciousness may indeed exist non-locally, independent of biology, perhaps at greater depth, intensity, and being. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm back. That was a really great way, I think, the best video I found to really give you the cliff notes of everything Hameroff can tell you in a lot of these different lectures he has. And this is just a tip of the iceberg. What is really going on when you look at this is that there is a lot of science and a lot of scientists involved in this research, and it is all pointing in one direction. And while the atheist or materialist world is people with that worldview are doing everything in their power to maintain their worldview, they go and we all focus on things like evolution, intelligent design, or any particular religion versus the atheist, and on and on and on. It is the science of consciousness nobody is really talking about, where scientists are actually proving these things and collecting evidence and doing experiments and coming up with models. And this is, like I said, the reason why the so-called AI cannot function with any whatever computational trickery they're doing, because that is not where consciousness is coming from. You need consciousness really to have intelligence, to have real AI. So also the key things that he said there were that this is pseudoscience. He's going up against pseudoscience, and these pseudoscientists and pseudoskeptics are really holding up a lot of progress and a lot of common knowledge into this stuff, and really it's not out there for everybody. Nobody really knows about this stuff. How many people watching this video right now knew all this scientific information about consciousness? Unless you start looking at it really closely, it just seems to, it's not popular. Nobody's talking about it. So at least in certain circles. So and at the end, there's a good scientific rationale to believe in basically that the conscious you will continue to live not only after death, but continue in a more profound, more fulfilling way. Near-death experiencers seem to have instantaneous access to knowledge, omnidirectional vision, a timeless awareness that we cannot perceive here and trapped in our linear time bodies that we in our universe, the way we perceive it here. It's just fascinating to think about. So I have more though. I'm not quite done yet because I'm going to show you just how ridiculous it is when they say, well, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And honestly, it doesn't matter what evidence you give them. And I'm going to prove at the end, toward the end, I'm going to give you a little proof that, yes, there are black holes. I'll show you one. Stay tuned. So anyway, back to the video clips here just one more time. This is Dr. Pin van Lommel. He has written a book, Consciousness Beyond Life. Another scientist, another doctor. He does a lot of work in that field. He's been part of large studies about NDEs, and I believe one of the largest ones conducted by the Dutch. So anyway, I just want to play a small clip of one of his videos, and of course, any video I've been playing clips of, you'll be able to see them all. I'll link to them all in the description section below. But he's, well, let's listen to him talk.
As Sampani and Peter Fenwick from the English study write that the data from several NDE studies suggest that the NDE arises during unconsciousness. And this is a surprising conclusion, because when the brain is so dysfunctional that the patient is deeply comatose, those cerebral structures which underpin subjective experience and memory must be severely impaired. Complex experiences such as reported in the NDE should not arise or be retained in memory. Such patients would be expected to have no subjective experience at all. And Penny Sartori from the other English study concludes that according to mainstream science, it is quite impossible to find a scientific explanation for the NDE as long as we believe that consciousness is only a side effect of a functioning brain. The fact that people report lucid experiences in their consciousness when the brain activity has ceased is, in her view, difficult to reconcile with current medical opinion. This lack of evidence for any other theory of NDE, the concept this far assumed, but never scientifically proven, that consciousness and memories are produced by large groups of neurons and are localized in the brain, should be discussed. How could a clear consciousness outside one's body be experienced at the moment that the brain no longer functions during a period of clinical death, even with a flatline EEG? And I'll come to it back later. Furthermore, even blind people have described veridical perceptions during an out-of-body experience at the time of their NDE. Scientific study of NDE pushes us to the limits of our medical and neurophysiological ideas about the range of human consciousness and the mind-brain relation. I would like now to discuss into more detail the out-of-body experience, OBE, during NDE. In this experience, people have veridical perceptions from a position outside and above their lifeless body. The NDEs have the feeling that they have apparently taken off the body like an old coat, and to their surprise, they appear to have retained their own identity with the possibility of perception, emotion, and a very clear consciousness. The range of vision can extend to 360 degrees with simultaneous detailed and bird's eye views. And even people blind from birth have reported veridical perceptions during NDE and OBE. This out-of-body experience is scientifically important because doctors, nurses, and relatives can verify the reported perceptions. They can also corroborate the precise moment the NDE with OBE occurred during the period of CPR. In a recent review of about 100 corroborated reports of potentially verifiable out-of-body perception during NDE, Dan Holden has found that about 90% were completely accurate. 8% contained only some minor error, and 2% was completely false. And this proves that an OBE cannot be an hallucination, because this means experience a perception that has no basis in reality, like in psychosis. Neither can it be a delusion, which is an incorrect assessment of a correct perception, nor is it an illusion, which means a misapprehensive or misleading image. Moreover, one needs a functioning brain for experiences, hallucinations, delusion, and illusions. Additionally, OBEs with theoretical perception from a position out and above the body have never been induced, despite mentioning this in medical literature, because only bodily illusions were induced by inhibition of special areas of the cortex, but never theoretical perception from a position out and above the body. This real OBE is clearly shown in the drawing of a 6-year-old girl who nearly drowned and was resuscitated in the hospital in the United States. And in the drawing you see a happy and smiling girl up here, watching her own resuscitation with many correct details like the external chest compression, etc. Doctor standing here. People from children 6 years don't know exactly how to resuscitate people. And this is the report of a nurse of a coronary care unit. During night shift, an ambulance brings in a 40-year-old cyanotic, comatose man into the coronary care unit who was found in coma about 30 minutes before in a meadow. When we go to intubate the patient, he turns out to have dentures in his mouth. I remove these upper dentures and put them onto the crash cart. And only about an hour and a half, the patient has sufficient heart rhythm and blood pressure, but he is still ventilated and intubated, and he's still comatose. He is transferred to the intensive care unit to continue the necessary artificial respiration for 1 week, because he's another 1 week in coma. And after more than 1 week in coma, do I meet again with a patient who is by now back on the cardiac ward. The moment he sees me, he said, "Oh yes, you know where my dentures are." I'm very, very surprised. And then the patient elucidates, "Yes, you were there when I was brought into hospital. And you took my dentures out of my mouth and put them to that cart with all these bottles on it. And there was this sliding drawer underneath. And there you have put my teeth." I was especially amazed because I remember this happening while the man was in deep coma and in the process of CPR. It appeared that the man had seen himself lying in bed, that he had perceived from above how nurses and doctors had been busy with the CPR. He was also able to describe correctly and to detail the small room which he had been resuscitated, as well as the appearances of those present, like myself. So that was the OBE during cardiac arrest. And then the idea of somebody who was colorblind. I saw the most dazzling colors, which was all the more surprising because I am colorblind. I saw beautiful landscapes, meadows, mountains, and flowers. I can distinguish primary colors, but pastels all look the same for me. But suddenly I could see them all kinds of different shades. Don't ask me to name them, because I lack the necessary experience for that. And then here's an account of a patient who had an NE with an out-of-body experience caused by complications during surgery. So it was on general anesthesia as well. No, I'd never heard of near-death experiences, and I'd never had any interest in paranormal phenomena or anything of that nature. What happened was that I suddenly became aware of hovering over the foot of the operating table and watching the activity down below around the body of a human being. Soon it dawned on me that it was my own body. So I was hovering above it, above the lamp, which I could see through. I also heard everything that was said. "Hurry up, you bloody bastard," was one of the things I remember them shouting. And even weirder, I didn't just hear them talk, but I could also read the minds of everybody in the room, or so it seemed to me. It was all quite close, I later learned, because it took 4.5 minutes to get my heart, which had stopped, going on again. As a rule, oxygen deprivation causes brain damage after 3 or 3.5 minutes. I also heard the doctor say that he thought I was dead. Later he confirmed saying this, and he was astonished to learn that I had heard it. I also told them that they should mind their language during surgery. Next up is the account of Vicky, a woman who was born blind. She was born extremely premature in 1951 after pregnancy of only 22 weeks and immediately placed in a very primitive incubator and administered 100% oxygen. Such a high concentration of oxygen damaged the development of the eyeball and the optic nerve, which doctors were not aware of in the early days of the incubator. Vicky suffered complete atrophy, withering of the eyeball and the optic nerve, and the visual cortex also failed to develop properly. And in 1973, when Vicky was 22, she was hurled out of her car in a traffic accident. A basal skull fracture and severe concussion left her in coma, and she had fractured neck and back vertebrae and a broken leg. She caught a brief glimpse of the car wreck from above. As a blind woman, she could see and recognize the smashed Volkswagen van. And later in the emergency room where she had been taken by ambulance, she was able to see from above a body on a metal gurney. She also spotted two people and could hear them talking and expressing their concern. It was only when she recognized her wedding ring, which of course she knew only by touch, that she realized that it was her own body. And after he had gone up through the ceiling, she saw the roof of the hospital and trees. Quote, "I have never seen anything. No light, no shadows, no nothing. A lot of people ask me if I see black. No, I don't see black. I don't see anything at all. And in my dreams, I don't see any visual impressions. It's just taste, touch, sound, and smell. But no visual impression of anything. The next thing I recall, I was in Harborview Medical Center and looking down at everything that was happening. And it was frightening because I'm not accustomed to see things visually, because I never had before. And initially..."
All right, let me stop it here. What kind of deranged people, how deranged do you have to be to try to, when you take it all, the totality of all the evidence, and not say there's something going, at least say there's something going on here, science needs to look into it, right? But on the other side, you have certain religious interpretations that believe that plants, bacteria, fungi, and even insects do not fit into the criteria as alive. Even atheists will, or some scientists don't even believe dogs have consciousness. I can tell you, I've had dogs and they are conscious. They also have personalities. They make decisions, choices. They can be naughty. They can feel guilt. I believe. All right, should I just tell you what I believe, or what I think? Maybe my own personal model or theory, whatever you want to call it. What if you didn't have any mental baggage? What if you looked at all this and tried to figure out a worldview of reality based on only the data, evidence, and science, and didn't try to make ancient books fit into your modern observations, and it didn't do anything? What you have all these cases and near-death experience. You have the scientific study of consciousness, the attempts at AI, the physics, the quantum mechanics, and you just put it all together and came up with just a landscape view of what would you see? What I see is, there's a source creator God. People in near-death experiences, they sometimes get into it far enough where they can see this source creator God. It is emitting a euphoric, incredible light. It is, this God is pure light. I'm not going to attribute any kind of qualities to that source creator, male or female. It could be either or. It could be a split of two. I don't know. It could be okay. So what else do I see? I see that the whole message brought back from NDEs is that the only thing that matters is love and caring and honesty and all the good things are what is good. And when you die, you're going to have to relive everything you ever did to anybody else, the way that affected them. So as you go through your day, keeping that in mind, how would we treat each other today if everybody had that worldview? Obviously, our lives go on after bodily existence is over and in a much better place. Instantaneous knowledge, instantaneous communication, instantaneous travel, glorious landscapes and views, colors that we've never seen before. I'm just putting together like a collage of what everybody, a general collage of what we're getting from all this NDE evidence, combined with scientific rationale that consciousness functions separate from the body. So there's plants there. People have seen trees, grass, landscapes that seem more vivid, more beautiful than they do here. They see dogs, animals, cats, all kinds of creatures, birds have been reported. Their pets. People are reunited with their pets, relatives, friends, loved ones that have died already. So I guess that would be good evidence that we maintain our individuality after death here. We're still us in some purer form. That's, you can, a word to the wise. You can, obviously, you look at a lot of this stuff, a lot of the links below, and you see a lot of this scientist, that scientist. You may be tempted to put comments like I've seen before from well-meaning people. Right? Every atheist should see this, quote unquote. You're dealing with you're just going to frustrate yourself, in my opinion. Most of the time, these people, like I said, anytime anybody is operating from an entrenched belief, they're not willing to cross-examine themselves about their own belief. If that belief is based on a corruption or error and you're trying to show them that it's wrong, you are just going to frustrate yourself. Only the person themselves can fix that. And this has been a long video, and hope you made it this far. I said I was going to show you an actual black hole. So I subscribe to God Rules channel, and I just wanted to watch the beginning of this video. He does some good videos sometimes showing. If you need to watch idiots babble, atheist babble, a good place to watch them is on God Rules channel, because he's like a buffer between you and the moron on the other side, and at least he makes good humor about it, and it's tolerable, because I could not just watch too much of these people. But watch this.
Coming at you live, sporting a new haircut. It's God Rules, and I'm going to do a little bit of review of this amazing idiot named TJ and his various videos, particularly the one with Vigilant Christian versus the Drunken Peasants. And also, they're covering in this little podcast, apparently this video here, Jesus is a Scumbag by Amazing Atheist.
Most people do not want to talk about Jesus. In fact, I know people who specifically talk about Jesus when they want to be left alone. Because the second you bring up Jesus in everyday conversation, people are like, oh shit, one of these fucking nutters. Even other Christians think that shit. Even people who read the Bible and believe in Jesus, if you bring up Jesus like at work or just like on the street, like, you know what this reminds me of? A parable of Jesus. People are going to be like, oh, fuck. Oh, God. In fact, look at this guy who got out of being interrogated at the border just by pretending like he's some Jesus freak.
You're a citizen?
Hey, actually, a more important question than that, it's asked one time in the Bible, is what must I do to be saved? And they said, believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and thou shalt be saved in thy house. So, if you got about 10 minutes, I can walk you through that in the Bible and show you how to be saved.
I can't right now.
You can't? Now's not a good time?
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
Have a good one, sir. Thank you.
Yep, see you later.
And I just
Now, in case you didn't know who that guy in the car was, that was Steven Anderson. And this moron atheist over here, the amazing atheist, he doesn't even know that is an actual. You can't really get more fundamentalist Christian than Steven Anderson. He's not pretending to be a Christian; he is one. So there's your black hole, people. The mind of an atheist is a black hole. No reason can escape from there. If you don't have warp drive that's solidly founded in your ability to analyze this stuff and to research it for yourself and to look at what scientists say, examine what religious people say, use your own common sense, use the power of observation, you're going to get sucked in maybe, and you'll never get out, right? So it turns out there are black holes, and we don't have to go to space to see one. The last thing, back to that thing where I was trying to give you my own view of things. If you were just going to reduce them down to their simplest possible concept, it's just about trying to do the right thing, love one another while you're here, be nice to one another, and know that after this is done, we go on to a much better existence, whatever that is. And probably doesn't require many complicated rules or dogma to get there. It's my opinion. It really is about what's in your heart. And, well, I don't know if you made it this far into the video. I went on for a long time. This is a really long video. I did put a lot of effort into it. I did a lot of research. I hope that everything comes out and gets articulated in the way that I wanted it to be articulated at. And I think it's time to close this sucker up now and put the clips together and upload everything to YouTube. So if you're watching it there, I did all that. And I'll see you next time on the Overwatch channel. This is my big science, consciousness, life beyond death, and atheist or stupid video. Have a nice day.